The quantum communication chamber on Throne Prime had never hosted a conversation like this one. Emperor Donghyun sat across from a holographic projection of Captain Junseo, two leaders representing civilizations that had been enemies for centuries. "Your Majesty," Junseo said with a slight bow of his head, "thank you for agreeing to speak with me directly." The Emperor studied the human carefully. This man did not look like a conqueror or a terrorist. He looked like someone who had seen too much suffering and had finally found the power to do something about it. "Captain Junseo, your forces have demonstrated their strength. The galaxy has taken notice. What do you want from the Empire?" "Justice, Your Majesty. Nothing more, nothing less." Chancellor Seungwoo leaned forward. "And what does justice look like to you?" Junseo's expression became distant, as if he was remembering something painful. 200 years ago, your empire destroyed my homeworld. Billions of innocent people died. Entire civilizations were wiped out simply because we refused to bow to imperial rule. That was war, Emperor Donghyun said quietly. Terrible, but necessary for galactic unity. No, Your Majesty. That was genocide, and under any civilized law, genocide demands justice. The Emperor felt old suddenly, older than his 150 years. What kind of justice? "The Empire can continue to exist," Junseo said, surprising everyone in the room. "But it must change. No more conquest. No more enslaving of free worlds. You will become a member of a new galactic confederation, one based on cooperation rather than domination." "And if we refuse?" Chancellor Seungwoo asked. Junseo's calm expression did not change. "Then you will share the fate you gave to humanity 2 centuries ago." The Emperor considered this. Around him, his advisors waited nervously for his decision. Outside, the greatest empire in galactic history hung in the balance. "Tell me about this confederation you represent," the Emperor said finally. "The Human Stellar Confederation is not just human anymore, Your Majesty. In our exile, we encountered dozens of species that had been driven to the galaxy's edge by imperial expansion. We united them, gave them hope, shared our knowledge with them. We became something new." Admiral Taemin, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Captain, how did you advance so far so quickly? Our scientists say your technology should be impossible." Junseo smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm. "We were guided, Admiral. In the void between galaxies, we found the remnants of an ancient civilization. They called themselves the Precursors," Dr. Nari gasped. "The Precursors are real? We thought they were myths." "Very real, Doctor. They transcended physical existence millions of years ago, but they left behind guardians, artificial intelligences of incredible power and wisdom. One of them, which we call the Shepherd, chose to guide humanity." "Why?" the Emperor asked. "Why humanity?" "Because we had been broken but refused to stay broken. Because we learned from our defeat rather than being crushed by it. Because we showed the same determination in exile that we had shown in war." Junseo paused. "The Shepherd said that true strength comes not from never falling, but from getting back up each time you fall." The conversation continued for hours. Junseo explained how the precursor technology worked, how it bent the laws of physics that the Empire thought were absolute. He spoke of weapons that existed in multiple dimensions, of ships that could phase in and out of reality, of a communication network that connected minds across the galaxy instantly. But more than the technology, he spoke of the philosophy behind it. The precursors had learned that true civilization was not about conquest, but about growth. Not about domination, but about cooperation. They had transcended the physical universe by transcending the need for conflict. "The galaxy is large enough for all of us," Junseo said, "but it requires wisdom to see that. The Empire has forgotten this truth." Emperor Donghyun made his decision as the sun set over his capital world. "What are your terms?" "The Terra Accords," Junseo replied, and suddenly his aide, Commander Yunji, appeared with a datapad. "Full autonomy for all former human colonies. Reparations to be paid over 50 years. The Empire becomes a constitutional member of the Galactic Confederation, democratic reforms within imperial space, and an end to aggressive expansion." "These terms would fundamentally change the Empire," Chancellor Seungwoo protested. "Yes," Junseo agreed. "That is the point." The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Around him, the weight of history pressed down like a physical force. Finally he nodded. "I accept your terms, Captain. The Empire will sign the Terra Accords, The news spread across the galaxy within hours. On Imperial worlds there was shock and disbelief. Many could not accept that their mighty empire had been forced to surrender to a handful of human ships. General Wu Jin and several other hardline officers attempted to organize resistance, but they found little support. The demonstration of human power had been too complete, too overwhelming. Even the most militant Imperial citizens understood that fighting the humans would mean extinction. Governor Ji Wu was one of the first to embrace the new order. Finally, she told her staff, we can focus on building instead of conquering. Admiral Tae Min found himself adapting more easily than he had expected. The humans offered to share some of their technology, and he discovered that commanding ships that could phase through dimensions was far more interesting than bullying weaker civilizations. But not everyone accepted the changes. General Wu Jin escaped to the Outer Rim with a small fleet of loyalist ships, vowing to restore the true empire someday. Jun Seo allowed him to go, knowing that time would solve that problem eventually. 6 months after the Terra Accords were signed, Captain Jun Seo stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, looking out at a transformed galaxy. His communications officer, Commander Eunji, approached with a report. Sir, the last of the reparation ships has arrived at New Terra. The colonists are finally coming home. Jun Seo nodded, watching as human ships began landing on the world that had once been called Kepler 442b. It had been one of the first human colonies destroyed by the Empire, and now it would be one of the first to be reborn. Any word from the Outer Rim settlements? He asked. 3 more worlds have requested membership in the Confederation. The Zalarian Republic, the Mantis Collective, and the Free Traders Alliance. Yunji smiled. It seems everyone wants to be part of what we're building. Through the view screen, Jun Seo could see other ships in the harbor. Imperial vessels worked alongside human craft, their crews learning to cooperate rather than compete. Former enemies were becoming allies, united by a vision of what the galaxy could be. Sir, Yunji said softly, do you think it will last, this peace we've built? Jun Seo considered the question. Nothing lasts forever, Commander, but perhaps it will last long enough to plant seeds that will grow into something even better. He thought about the Shepherd, the ancient AI that had guided humanity through their darkest hours. Before the final battle, it had shared one last piece of wisdom. The greatest victory is the one that makes future victories unnecessary. Looking out at the busy spaceport, at Imperial and human ships working together, at the representatives of dozens of species preparing for the next Confederation Council meeting, Jun Seo thought perhaps they had achieved that greatest victory. The galaxy that had tried to erase humanity had instead been transformed by it. Not through conquest or revenge, but through the simple demonstration that there was a better way to live among the stars. The Empire still existed, but it was no longer an empire of conquest. The humans had returned, but they had returned as teachers rather than destroyers, and somewhere in the void between galaxies, ancient guardians watched and approved of what their protégés had accomplished. The galaxy belonged to all its children now, not just the strongest, and for the first time in centuries, the future looked bright among the stars. The emergency session of the Imperial War Council took place on the capital world of Throne Prime, in a massive chamber that had seen the planning of 1,000 conquests. Today, for the first time in centuries, they were planning a defense. Grand Admiral Young Min stood before the holographic display showing the disaster at Kepler 442. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands shook slightly as he pointed at the tactical readout. The Third Fleet is already en route, he announced to the assembled admirals and generals. 230 ships, including the super dreadnought Divine Mandate. We will show these humans that their little demonstration was meaningless against the full might of the Empire. Admiral Tae Min, who had arrived on Throne Prime just hours earlier, stood up slowly. His uniform was still stained from his escape pod, and his usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Grand Admiral, with respect, you don't understand what we're facing. These are not the humans from our history books. They have technology that our scientists say shouldn't exist. Impossible technology is still just technology, Young Min replied dismissively. Numbers will tell in the end. No 18 ships can stand against 200. Lieutenant Mi Young of Imperial Intelligence had been studying the sensor data for days. She looked up from her tablet with worried eyes. Sir, the numbers may not matter. Our deep-range scanners are detecting more human ships throughout the sector. At least 40 vessels now, with more arriving daily. Dr. Nari had not slept since the battle. She had been working with the Empire's best scientists, trying to understand the human weapons. The wreckage we recovered shows materials that exist in multiple dimensions at once. Their weapons appear to fire concentrated dark matter, and their defensive systems, she shook her head. They seem to manipulate space-time itself. Nonsense, General Wu Jin declared. The old soldier had fought in dozens of campaigns and never lost a battle. No species can master such forces. They must be using some kind of trick, some illusion technology. The dead ships are not illusions, Admiral Taemin said quietly. Captain Sung Ho of Imperial Intelligence cleared his throat. There is something else. Our deep archives contain fragmentary reports from early Imperial expansion. References to ancient ruins, to civilizations that vanished millions of years ago. We dismissed them as legends, but what? Grand Admiral Young Min demanded. The humans mentioned being taught by ancient civilizations. What if those legends were true? What if there really are species out there older than our empire? Species with technology we can't imagine. The chamber fell silent. The idea that the empire was not the pinnacle of galactic evolution was terrifying to most of the officers present. Even if that's true, Young Min said finally, it changes nothing. The Third Fleet will handle this situation. But even as he spoke, reports were coming in from across the empire. Human ships had appeared in a dozen sectors. Not attacking, just appearing, scanning imperial worlds and installations like they were taking inventory. The battle for Kronos 7 began 3 days later. Grand Admiral Young Min commanded from the bridge of the Divine Mandate, a ship so large it had its own gravitational field. Around him, 200 imperial vessels moved in perfect formation, the largest fleet assembled in decades. Sir, enemy contacts detected, the sensor officer reported. 7 ships moving to intercept. Young Min almost laughed. 7 ships? Are they surrendering? But as the Imperial fleet closed in, something strange happened. The human ships began to change. Their hulls seemed to shimmer and shift, becoming translucent one moment and solid the next. They moved in impossible ways, appearing to be in multiple places at once. What are we looking at? Young Min demanded. I don't know, sir, the sensor officer replied. The readings are inconsistent. Sometimes I can see 7 ships, sometimes 14, sometimes none at all. Captain Haijin of the battleship Eternal Glory was the first to realize what was happening. They're phasing in and out of normal space. They exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. The human ships opened fire, and the Imperial fleet learned the true meaning of terror. The dark matter weapons passed through Imperial shields like they were not there. Entire ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but unmade at the molecular level. The Divine Mandate's weapons officer tried to return fire, but his targeting systems could not lock onto the shifting human vessels. Sir, I can't get a solid lock. They keep changing phase. Young Min watched in horror as ship after ship vanished from his fleet. The humans moved with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. They knew where every Imperial ship would be before it moved, anticipated every tactical decision before it was made. How are they doing this? He demanded. His science officer, Dr. Kyung Ho, was studying the enemy movements with growing amazement. Sir, I think they're sharing information instantaneously. Quantum entanglement communication, perhaps, or something even more advanced. They're not fighting as separate ships but as parts of a single organism. The battle became a nightmare for the Imperial forces. The humans did not just defeat their enemies. They dissected them with surgical precision. Every shot was perfectly placed, every movement calculated for maximum effect. They fought like they could see the future. In less than an hour, half the Imperial fleet was gone. The survivors were scattered and demoralized, their formations shattered by an enemy they could barely see and could not touch. Sir, we must retreat, Captain He-jin urged over the communications channel. We cannot win this battle. For the first time in Imperial history, a Grand Admiral gave the order to retreat. All ships withdraw immediately. Jump to hyperspace as soon as you clear the gravity well. But even in retreat, the humans demonstrated their superiority. They allowed the Imperial ships to escape, but not before sending a message. The surviving vessels found their computers had been infiltrated, their databases copied, their most secret codes compromised. The humans had not just defeated the Imperial fleet. They had learned everything the Empire knew. Back on Throne Prime, the news of the Third Fleet's defeat caused panic. For the first time in centuries, Imperial citizens began to wonder if their government could protect them. Emperor Donghyun himself, ancient ruler of the galaxy's greatest empire, called an emergency meeting. His advisors, led by Chancellor Seung-woo, presented him with a stark choice. "Your Majesty, we can continue to fight," the Chancellor said, "but our military experts believe we cannot win. The humans have technology centuries ahead of our own." "Then what do you suggest?" the Emperor asked wearily. "Negotiation, Your Majesty. We must speak with them before they decide to stop playing with us and start serious conquest." Emperor Donghyun had ruled for over a century. He had seen the empire grow from a collection of worlds to a galactic superpower. The idea of bowing to anyone was alien to him, but he was also wise enough to recognize reality when it struck him in the face. "Contact the humans," he ordered. "Tell them the empire is ready to discuss terms." Throughout Imperial space, planetary governors began making their own decisions. Some, like Governor Jiwoo of the industrial world Pharaoh Prime, declared neutrality and opened communications with human representatives. Others, like Governor Hae-won of the agricultural world New Eden, actually welcomed the human ships that appeared in their systems. The empire that had seemed eternal just weeks before was beginning to fracture. And at the center of it all, Captain Junseo and his fleet waited patiently for the Emperor's response. The galaxy was about to change forever. Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Emperor's Will, watching as his task force moved into battle formation. 12 Imperial warships, including 2 heavy cruisers and the massive dreadnought under Captain Jin'e's command, represented more firepower than most planets had ever seen. It should be more than enough to handle 18 human vessels. "Admiral, we are in position," Captain Jin'e reported from her command chair. The woman was known throughout the fleet as one of the Empire's finest tacticians. If anyone could handle the humans, it was her. "Excellent, Captain. Signal the fleet to prepare for engagement." Admiral Taemin felt confident for the first time since this crisis began. The Empire had not built the largest military in galactic history by backing down from threats. Lieutenant Da-eun, who had transferred to the dreadnought for the operation, was monitoring enemy movements from her scanner station. "Sir, the human ships are holding position. They don't seem to be forming any kind of battle line." Commander Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. "Arrogant. They think they don't need proper formation to fight us. We'll show them the cost of underestimating Imperial might." The lead human ship, the Retribution, hung in space exactly where it had been for the past 3 days. The other human vessels were scattered throughout the system, apparently paying no attention to the approaching Imperial fleet. "Open a channel to Captain Junseo," Admiral Taemin ordered. The human captain appeared on the main screen, looking as calm as ever. "Admiral Taemin, have you come to accept our proposal?" "I've come to show you the folly of threatening the Empire," the Admiral replied. "You have one chance to surrender peacefully." Junseo nodded slowly. "I see. You have chosen to learn the hard way. Very well. But understand, Admiral, that what happens next is not murder. It is education." "What are you talking about?" Admiral Taemin demanded, but the transmission had already ended. "Sir, the human ships are launching fighters," Lieutenant Da-eun reported. 6 small craft from the Retribution," Captain Jin'e laughed. 6 fighters against 12 capital ships? Are they serious?" "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Taemin commanded. "Show them what Imperial firepower can do." The Imperial fleet opened fire as one, hundreds of energy beams and missiles streaking toward the human vessels. The light show was spectacular, enough concentrated fire to reduce a small moon to rubble. But something was wrong. The human ships were not where the targeting computers said they should be. One moment they were there, the next they had simply moved faster than anything should be able to move in space. "Impossible," Commander Hyunwoo breathed. "Nothing can accelerate that quickly without killing the crew." "Sir, the fighters are approaching fast," Lieutenant Da-eun called out. "Very fast. They're not showing up properly on our sensors." Admiral Taemin watched in disbelief as the 6 human fighters weaved through the Imperial formation like they were flying through empty space. They moved with impossible grace, turning and spinning in ways that should have torn them apart. "Point defense systems. Engage those fighters," Captain Jin'e ordered. The Imperial ships began firing their smaller weapons, filling space with streams of laser fire. But the human fighters danced between the beams like they could see the future. Not one shot connected. Then the human fighters fired back. The weapons they used made no sense. There was no visible beam, no missile trail, nothing that the Imperial sensors could detect. But wherever they aimed, Imperial ships died. The heavy cruiser domination simply stopped working. Its lights went out, its engines shut down, and it began to drift helplessly through space. The destroyer's swift death broke apart along invisible lines as if something had cut through its hull like paper. "What kind of weapons are those?" Admiral Taman demanded. "I don't know, sir," Lieutenant Daon replied, her voice shaking. "Our sensors can't detect the energy signatures. It's like they're firing nothing, but our ships are still being destroyed." Meanwhile, the human capital ships had finally moved. The Retribution turned toward the Emperor's will with the slow majesty of a predator that knew its prey could not escape. When it fired its main weapons, the beams that emerged were darker than space itself. Captain Jinne felt her ship shudder as the dark energy struck their shields. "Damage report. Shields down to 60% from a single hit," her weapons officer reported in shock. "Sir, that's impossible. Our shields are rated to withstand sustained bombardment from multiple ships. Return fire. All weapons." The Emperor's will unleashed everything it had at the Retribution. Particle beams, plasma cannons, and fusion missiles filled the space between the two ships. The human vessel was completely engulfed in the explosion. When the light faded, the Retribution was unharmed. Not a scratch marked its dark hull. "That's not possible," Captain Jinne whispered. "Nothing can survive that kind of firepower." Admiral Taman watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. The human ships moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will. Their weapons cut through Imperial defenses as if they were made of paper. And worst of all, the Imperial fleet could barely even hit them in return. "Sir, we've lost 7 ships," Lieutenant Dayon reported. "The survivors are requesting permission to retreat." "No retreat," Admiral Taman said firmly. "The Empire does not run from battle." But even as he spoke, he knew they were beaten. This was not a battle. It was a massacre. The humans were not fighting with desperation or luck. They were demonstrating their superiority with the casual ease of adults correcting children. The end came quickly. The Emperor's will shuddered as another dark beam struck home, and this time the shields failed completely. Emergency lights flickered on as system after system went offline. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Damage control reported. We're losing atmosphere. Reactor containment is failing." Captain Jinne looked at Admiral Taman with eyes full of fear. "Sir, we have to abandon ship. The reactor will go critical in less than 5 minutes." Admiral Taman wanted to refuse. He wanted to go down with his ship like a proper Imperial officer. But then he realized that someone needed to survive to tell the Empire what they were really facing. "Give the order to abandon ship," he said quietly. "All hands to the escape pods." As the crew rushed to evacuate, Captain Jinne sent one final message to Imperial Command. "The humans, they're not the same species we fought before. They've become something else, something we can't fight." The Emperor's will exploded in a ball of white fire, taking with it the last of Admiral Taman's confidence in Imperial superiority. Captain Junseo watched the destruction from his bridge without satisfaction. There was no joy in this victory, only grim necessity. His communications officer, Commander Unji, looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving surrender signals from the surviving Imperial ships." "Accept their surrender," Junseo replied. "Provide medical assistance to any survivors." "Sir, shouldn't we capture them for interrogation?" Junseo shook his head. "No, let them go. They have a message to deliver to their empire." He stood up and walked to the main viewing port. "Open a channel on all Imperial frequencies." When the channel was ready, Junseo spoke calmly into the camera. "Citizens of the Galactic Empire, I am Captain Lee Junseo of the Human Stellar Confederation. Today you witnessed a demonstration of our capabilities. This was not an attack. This was a lesson." He paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of Imperial worlds. "We are not the humans you remember. We have learned from our defeat. We have grown beyond your understanding. We have become something new, something stronger than what you destroyed 2 centuries ago." Another pause. "This demonstration was mercy. Our next response will not be. You have been warned." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate what they had just witnessed. In a single engagement, everything the Empire believed about human capabilities had been proven wrong. The question now was, What would they do with this knowledge? The emergency meeting room on Nexus Prime had never seen so much tension. Admiral Taemin sat at the head of the long metal table, watching as his officers tried to make sense of what they had learned. The holographic display in the center showed the human ship Retribution, along with the 17 other vessels that had appeared throughout the sector. The energy readings don't make sense, Commander Hyunwoo was saying, pointing at the data streams. A ship that size should need at least 6 fusion reactors to maintain power. But I'm only detecting one energy source and it's putting out more power than our entire station. Dr. Nari, the station's expert on alien species, had her face buried in her tablet. I've been reading every file we have on humans. According to our records, they were primitive when we defeated them. Their best ships barely had faster-than-light travel. Their weapons couldn't penetrate basic Imperial shields. That was 200 years ago, Admiral Taemin reminded her. People change. Technology advances. Not this much, Dr. Nari protested. The jump in capability is impossible. It's like comparing a stone axe to a plasma cannon. Lieutenant Da-un looked up from her scanning station. Admiral, Captain Junseo is requesting another meeting. He says he has a proposal for us. Admiral Taemin straightened his uniform. Put him through. The holographic display flickered and Captain Junseo appeared in the room. He looked exactly the same as before, calm and confident. Behind him, his bridge crew moved with quiet efficiency. Admiral Taemin, Junseo said with a slight nod. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me again. What do you want, Captain? The Admiral asked directly. To avoid unnecessary bloodshed, Junseo replied. I represent the Human Stellar Confederation, a government that has been building strength in the outer galaxy for the past 2 centuries. We have come to reclaim what was taken from us. Commander Hyunwoo leaned forward. Reclaim what? Your people lost a war. These worlds are Imperial territory now. Junseo's expression did not change. Your people committed genocide, Commander. You destroyed our homeworld and scattered our colonies. Under any law in any civilization, that is a crime that demands justice. That was war, Admiral Taemin said. Your people fought against Imperial expansion. They lost. They fought against Imperial invasion, Junseo corrected. And yes, they lost. But we did not die. We learned from our defeat. We spent 200 years preparing for this moment. Dr. Nari could not help herself. Preparing how? Where have you been all this time? Junseo smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuine. The galaxy is larger than the Empire believes, Doctor. Beyond your borders, in the galactic rim and the void between galaxies, there are civilizations that predate your empire by millions of years. They taught us much. The room went quiet. The idea of civilizations older than the Empire was not something Imperial scientists like to think about. The Empire was supposed to be the peak of galactic evolution. That's impossible, Commander Hyunwoo said. Our deep space probes have never found evidence of ancient civilizations. Your probes look for the wrong things, Junseo replied. You search for radio signals and metal structures. The truly ancient civilizations moved beyond such crude technology long ago. Admiral Taemin felt a headache forming behind his eyes. What exactly are you proposing, Captain? Simple. The Empire withdraws from all former human colonies. You pay reparations for the damage done to our people. In return, we will consider the matter settled and you can continue to exist in peace. The demand was so outrageous that several officers began to laugh. Commander Hyunwoo shook his head in disbelief. You're talking about hundreds of worlds, the Admiral said. Trillions of Imperial citizens. Billions of tons of infrastructure. You can't simply demand that the Empire give up a quarter of its territory. I'm not demanding anything, Junseo said calmly. I'm offering you a choice. You can accept our proposal and live, or you can reject it and face the consequences. Are you threatening the Empire? Admiral Taemin asked, his voice rising. I'm stating facts, Admiral. The Empire is not what it once was. You have grown soft, comfortable in your dominance. Your technology has barely advanced in centuries because you had no real challenges to face. Meanwhile, we have spent every day of the last 200 years preparing for war. Lieutenant Da-un was checking her scanners again. Admiral, the human ships are moving. They're taking positions throughout the system. On the display, Junseo nodded. We expected you to reject our proposal, Admiral. That is why we came prepared. You have 72 hours to evacuate this system. After that, we will begin reclamation operations. You're insane, Commander Hyunwoo burst out. Do you know how many ships the Empire can bring to bear against you? Do you have any idea of our military capability? I know exactly what the Empire is capable of, Junseo replied. The question is, do you know what we have become? Admiral Taman stood up slowly. Captain Junseo, I have served the Empire for 30 years. I have fought pirates, rebels, and alien invasions. I have never retreated from a battle, and I will not start now. I understand, Admiral. That is your choice to make. Junseo's image began to fade. 72 hours. Use that time wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial officers staring at empty air. The silence stretched for several minutes before Commander Hyunwoo spoke. They're bluffing. They have to be. 18 ships cannot defeat the entire Imperial Navy. Dr. Nari was still reading her tablet. The historical records mention human stubbornness. They never surrendered even when defeat was certain. They fought to the last man on every world. Then we'll destroy them like we did before, Commander Hyunwoo said firmly. Admiral Taemin was not so sure. He had seen something in Captain Junseo's eyes, a confidence that went beyond mere bravado. The human truly believed he could win. Contact the War Council again, the Admiral ordered. Request immediate reinforcements. I want every ship in the sector here within 48 hours. How many ships should I request, sir? Lieutenant Dayun asked. Admiral Taemin looked at the display showing the human vessels. They hung in space like dark omens, waiting for something. All of them, he said quietly. Request all of them. As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Admiral Taemin remained standing by the display. He had fought many battles in his career, but this felt different. The humans were not acting like desperate refugees or angry rebels. They were acting like they had already won. The thought sent a chill down his spine. What if they were right? What if the Empire was about to face something it could not defeat? In 70 hours he would have his answer. Lieutenant Daun stared at her scanner screen, blinking hard to make sure she was seeing correctly. The green dot on her display should not exist. It could not exist, yet there it was. A massive ship signature sitting at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like it had every right to be there. Admiral Taemin to the bridge, she called into her headset, her voice shaking slightly. We have a problem. The bridge of Nexus Prime was always busy. The massive space station orbited the fourth planet of the system, watching over one of the Empire's most important trade routes. Ships came and went every hour, carrying goods and people across the galaxy. But this ship was different. This ship was impossible. Admiral Taemin arrived within minutes, his tall frame moving quickly across the bridge. His gray hair was perfectly combed, as always, and his uniform showed no wrinkles. 20 years of commanding this sector had taught him to stay calm, no matter what happened. Report, he said, standing behind Daun's chair. Sir, we have an unknown contact. It dropped out of hyperspace 17 minutes ago. The signature is unusual. Daun's fingers moved across her controls, bringing up more data. The ship is large, Admiral. Very large. Bigger than anything in our records. Commander Hyun-woo looked up from his own station. Sensor error, he said with confidence. Has to be. Run a full diagnostic. Already did, sir. 3 times. The readings are accurate. Daun turned to face the Admiral. Sir, the ship's design. It matches old human patterns. The bridge went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing. The word human was not spoken lightly in Imperial space. Not anymore. Admiral Taemin felt his stomach drop. That's impossible. Humans were eliminated 200 years ago, every last one of them. The historical records are clear, Commander Hyunwoo added. Earth was destroyed. Their colonies were scattered. No human ship has been seen in Imperial space for over a century. But Da-un was shaking her head. Sir, I've run the signature through every database we have. The metal composition, the energy patterns, even the way it moves through space. It's human technology, but it's different too. More advanced than anything we've ever seen from them. Admiral Taemin studied the screen. The ship was huge, easily 3 times the size of an Imperial dreadnought. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, its dark hull reflecting no light. Long and angular, it looked like a weapon that had been built for war. What's it doing? He asked. Scanning, Daun replied. Deep scans of the entire system. It's being very thorough. Send Captain So Young to investigate, the Admiral ordered. Have her take the Imperial Fist and 2 escort ships. Tell her to approach carefully. Captain So Young had been patrolling the outer system when the call came. Her ship, the Imperial Fist, was a heavy cruiser built for exactly this kind of situation. Fast, well-armed, and tough enough to handle most threats. Unknown vessel, this is Captain So Young of the Imperial Navy, she broadcast as her ships approached. You are in violation of Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately. For several minutes there was no response. The human ship continued its scans as if the Imperial vessels were not even there. Captain So Young was about to repeat her message when her communications officer, Ensign Min Ho, looked up with wide eyes. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission, but it's not on normal channels. What do you mean? It's on old human frequencies. Ancient ones. The encryption is something I've never seen before, but the base pattern, it's definitely human. Captain So Young felt a chill run down her spine. Can you decode it? Working on it now, Captain. Min Ho's fingers flew across his controls. After several minutes, he nodded. Got it, the message is simple. They're requesting permission to talk. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. The man appeared to be in his 40s with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a uniform that none of them recognized, dark blue with silver trim. Behind him they could see a bridge that looked both familiar and strange. This is Captain Lee Jun-seo of the United Earth Stellar Navy ship Retribution, the man said. His voice was calm and confident. Thank you for responding to our communication request. Captain So Young tried to hide her shock. Captain Jun-seo, you are in Imperial space without permission. Humans are forbidden in this sector. The human captain smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Forbidden by whom? The empire that destroyed our world? The empire that scattered our people across the galaxy like leaves in the wind? That was 200 years ago, Captain So Young replied. Ancient history. Not to us, Jun-seo said quietly. We remember everything. Back on Nexus Prime, Admiral Taemin watched the conversation with growing alarm. This human spoke like someone who had authority, like someone who represented something larger than just one ship. Captain Jun-seo, the Admiral cut into the transmission. This is Admiral Taemin, commander of this sector. Where have you come from? Our records show that all human colonies were destroyed or absorbed into the Empire. Your records are incomplete, Admiral. Jun-seo's eyes were cold now. Humanity did not die. We fled, we learned, we grew, and now we've come home. This is not your home, Admiral Taemin said firmly. These worlds belong to the Empire now. These worlds belong to the Empire, Jun-seo corrected. That arrangement is about to change. The transmission cut off, leaving the Imperial ship staring at empty space. On the bridge of Nexus Prime, Admiral Taemin felt something he had not experienced in years. Fear. Sir? Da-Yun called out from her station. I'm detecting more ships dropping out of hyperspace. Multiple contacts throughout the sector. Admiral Taemin closed his eyes. One human ship was impossible. Multiple human ships was a nightmare. How many? He asked. 17 so far, sir. And more arriving every minute. The Admiral opened his eyes and looked at the main screen. The human ship called Retribution hung in space like a promise of violence. After 200 years of peace, after 200 years of believing that humanity was gone forever, they had returned, and they had not come alone. Contact the Imperial War Council, Admiral Taemin ordered. Priority Alpha transmission. Tell them we have a situation that requires immediate attention. As the communication officer sent the message, Admiral Taemin wondered if the Empire was ready for what was coming. The humans had been gone for 2 centuries. What had they learned in that time? What had they become? Looking at the massive ship on his screen, he had a feeling they were about to find out.